CMYK printing is done by layering 4 colors, cyan, magenta, yellow, and black on top of each other to recreate your art or realistic image with only those 4 screens. In this video, we're using Aurora Force water-based inks. When printed through high mesh counts like 305, these inks are very translucent, meaning they will not show up on dark garments at all. But because your ink is so translucent, you are able to create hundreds of thousands of colors with just these 4 inks. The process of printing this way begins in Adobe Photoshop. Let's head over there and get things rolling. All education regarding how to separate images into CMYK will focus on either a general education on how to color correct an image, as most images do come in washed out, or the color balance is very off, muddy, etc. Or the separator is specifically speaking to the nuances of the image that's in front of us. As all images are different, they will all need a slightly different approach. There are thousands of videos on YouTube about how to properly go about color correcting an image so it has the best color balance and visual pop. We encourage you to check out some of these videos that we have linked below in the description. So this image we're starting with today was already color corrected. You can see that it's a very bright, very saturated image. Now what we're going to do is we're going to convert this image into CMYK. And when I talk about converting an image into CMYK, I mean converting it using the color profile for the CMYK inks that we are going to print with. Download and install the CMYK profile for the inks you are using. Today, we're going to be using the Aurora Force water-based inks, and you can download the profile and then install it under Edit, Color Settings. Then go to the right of your color settings window. There is a Load button. We want you to click Load. Find the place that you have downloaded your 4-color process profile and click that. This is where it's going to show up here in your CMYK settings. So once you've loaded your CMYK profile, within your color settings window on the CMYK dropdown, we're going to want to scroll up to Custom CMYK. There are a few settings in here we want to double check. First thing we want to look at is our dot gain. It is recommended with water-based inks to set your dot gain somewhere around 30. Each of us will end up going in here at some point and adjusting this, adjusting it higher or adjusting it lower, depending on our results once we get on press. If you're on an automatic, you're probably going to go down. If you're on a manual, you're probably going to go up. Everyone's dot gain is going to be a little bit different based on how they print and the tools that they have. Understand that dot gain is the foundation for the saturation of your image. If your image looks washed out, then your dot gain settings are probably a little high. You're going to want to drop those to a lower percentage. If your image looks extremely saturated very quickly, then we need to increase those dot gain values. Get those values closer to 40%. At that point, get back on press and do more testing to further fine-tune your dot gain settings. After that, we want to look at our black generation. We have a choice of going with maximum, heavy, medium, or light black generation. For CMYK, we typically choose medium generation. We don't want to have black show up in our highlight areas, as it becomes overwhelming on press. We can see it too easily. But we do want black to help support our shadow areas. That means the 100% areas down to about the 50%, but between 75% and 50%, it definitely gets a lot lighter. And we let the colors end up making our gray values. After that, we will leave our black ink limit at 100%, and our total ink limit will be somewhere around 250. That ink limit also helps with the saturation we will see of our inks once we get on the t-shirt. You're always going to experience some color shift when you convert to CMYK. The conversion is always going to be image dependent on how much color shift will happen. Photoshop needs to recolor this design using the 4 colors specified in your CMYK profile. You do not hit the same breadth of color that traditional offset inks do. There's a little button up here under View Gamut Warnings. We're going to click that, and that's going to show us what colors cannot be reproduced with our CMYK ink set. As you can see here, there is quite a bit of gray. Every spot that is gray is not going to be reproducible with our CMYK inks. To give you a better understanding of the differences that you are going to see across CMYK colors, let's go back into those color settings and let's get into our custom CMYK, and we're going to change the CMYK inks that are loaded. So let's start with the Euro Standard. We have 3 versions: coated paper, newsprint, and uncoated paper. So let's start down here on uncoated. You can see the amount of gray, while still a large part of the design, is less than the color profile that we originally loaded. We go up here to the newsprint, and that gray increased even more. What that's telling us is that the ink profile for newsprint can't reproduce as much as the uncoated profile. This one has a much better color profile, meaning it's going to be able to reproduce a lot more of the colors, but still not every color in our image. These are the things that we need to pay attention to when we start reproducing our image and color correcting our image when it's converted into CMYK. So I'm going to cancel out of this. Another great tool is our info window up here under Windows, going down to Info, and if it's checked, it's popped up. So if you can't find it, all you have to do is uncheck this, check it back on, and your window will pop up. On this side, we have our RGB color space, which as we hover over a portion of the design, we can see the RGB color makeup. In this case, we have almost a full max 255 of the red. On this side, we'll have the CMYK color that represents the color profile you have loaded up. So let's go over here to this hot magenta. One of the things you'll notice is that there are exclamation points. This is a quick visual understanding that the color cannot be reproduced with the CMYK inks we currently have loaded. This was one of those colors that was definitely on that list of the gray, not reproducible colors. So now that you can see which colors can't be reproduced within our color set, we know that these are the colors that we're going to need to focus on when we go back in to do our image adjustment after converting to CMYK. Just because you hit the CMYK button does not mean you're done with separating your CMYK design. If you are looking at being color accurate, we need to make sure that we go back in and make all the adjustments to the colors that have shifted. So as you can see, I have this design up in 2 different windows. This one over here is in RGB mode, and it will be my visual color control for the window over here on my right. As I make adjustments here, I'm going to be referencing the colors that are in the RGB window. So this one being my working window, I will now convert to CMYK, and thankfully it's pretty simple. We go up to Mode, CMYK, and we watch it convert. And now we have what it looks like after you've converted to CMYK. We can see that the colors have gotten quite a bit duller. They have lost some of their vibrancy, which we can see here specifically in our magenta. The blues, the teals that we had in here are gone. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to walk you through what I have found is the best way to convert this image back into being as close to our control as possible. This is done with the purpose of doing color reproduction once we get on press. So let's jump into it. We're going to go up under Image Adjustments, and we're going to go to Selective Color. Now something that's really special about this window is that it allows us to go into primary color spaces. It allows us to touch on our reds, yellows, greens, blues, magentas, whites if we need to, our neutral color space, and the black color space. We're going to start with our reds, and we can start to make adjustments to the color that's in our reds. All right, there's a really good example. Let's take all this and put it back to 0. But that magenta in the red within CMYK, for those who don't know, yellow and magenta make up our red in the image. So getting rid of all that magenta, clearly not a good thing. We do need to boost our magenta in order to try and get to this hot red over here. Remember, there is a finite limit that we can achieve with CMYK. We cannot achieve strong reds, strong, bright, vibrant greens, true royals, and shades of purple, amongst other things. We do our best to simulate those colors the best we can within the color space that we've got. So what you're going to see here is me going through each of these colors and making adjustments to best match what I have over here in the RGB control window. So I'm going to marry this up with my use of the info window. So as I'm going over here, I'm going to see that within this color, my cyan is 2%. My magenta is 80%. But the question is, do I really want some of my cyan in here? Whenever you convert from RGB into CMYK, Photoshop is working its hardest with its algorithm to reproduce those colors as accurately as possible. We can see that that's about as good as I can do. But let's see what happens if I touch the cyan. You can see in the reds that it gets lighter or darker. Yeah, let's zero that out. Let's see what the black is going to do. Okay, so we're getting a little bit more depth to it with the increase in the black. Let's see what our before and after is. Well, we definitely have more red in there. That's our goal. We are achieving it. So you know what? For right now, I think our red looks pretty good. So what we did with this one was we increased our magenta to increase the red level compared to what it was before. This is very orange, but now it's closer to red and better matching the image over here. We increased our black in order to improve some of this depth and darkness that we have here. So let's go on to our next color here, yellow. All right, now we were talking earlier about cyan muddying up some of the yellows during conversion. So let's click on our cyan and you can see there's a lot of great green going on there. We want to try and minimize the amount of cyan that's in our yellow. We want to try and stay as close to a pure yellow as is required within our design. Now yes, there's traditionally a little bit of muddiness that goes on with the cyan and the yellow and some of the shadowy areas. Let's try and clean this up a little bit. Now we know that these yellow roses are not actually true yellow. There's a little bit of magenta in here. Let's take our eyedropper and take a look. So there's a little bit of cyan and there's, in this spot there's 18% magenta, 84% yellow. That's it, Definitely a golden tone over here, 7%. So let's see about pulling out some of this magenta. Just a little bit. Not too far off though, I like that. What happens if we hit our blacks? Just a little bit there. Yeah, let's see the preview. So what we're going to do is we're going to fast forward a little bit here, but we're going to keep following the same methodology from color to color. After the yellow comes the green, the light blue, the royals, and the magentas. And within each of those colors, they are all made up of other colors, with the exception of the magenta and the cyan, of course. In the green, we're talking about it being made up of primarily blue and yellow. Sometimes there's a little bit of magenta in there, but those are the things you want to pay attention to. Within the royal blue, you're going to pay attention to the blending of the magenta and the cyan. Within the cyan shade, you're going to worry more about the muddying of that color with the magenta, the black, and the yellow. So we're going to go through each of these a little quickly, but we're going to show you the final outcome for each color. And within that, you can understand the color build for those colors. So you see me playing with these sliders quite a bit, maxing them out, minimizing them. The purpose of this is to see what that color is going to do. if it's gone or if it's oversaturated. I do this to see what the extremes are when I mess with the color. You never know what can happen unless you push it in that direction. And it can be a really good learning curve to push something in one direction just to see what happens. With that understanding, I can better make adjustments so that things look correct, and better pick supporting colors to make adjustments to. In the white section, you can see I really didn't do much other than try and brighten up the yellow a little bit in those highlight areas. Within this design, there wasn't a whole lot that I could affect. But as always, go through every step and make sure that you are seeing what an adjustment could be and whether or not it's necessary. So when we get to the neutrals, what's really nice about this is you can end up making some overall adjustments to how your colors display. You can do a little bit more fine color balancing. Is it necessary in here? Not always, but it's a nice thing to play around with and see if you can enhance any of your overall color development, or bring out some contrast, or increase your highlights a little bit. There will be some colors that you simply cannot reproduce, like these teals up here in the rose petal, some of these purples that we're going to see here. When that happens, you simply do your best to reproduce the color as well as you can. So we definitely brought back a lot more contrast and a lot more vibrance. The color here looks a little flat and dull. We've definitely popped this up a little more. So I'm going to click OK. So let's get into our curves window. I'm going to hit Command M, and we're going to see about opening up our shadow details a little bit. So within the curves window, this is the 100% section, and this is our most dense area within the 75% tone. Those are our shadows. The 50% areas are our midtones, and these are our highlights. If I take this, moving towards that direction and not adjusting, not messing with stuff over there, just mess around with some shadow areas. Just see what it looks like. So you saw me messing around with the curves tool quite a bit, making some strange patterns, seeing what it's going to do to how color is represented in the image. In the end, all I did was a small adjustment to the shadows to try and open up a little bit of detail. So what do our separations look like? There's our black. There's our yellow. Here's our magenta. Cyan. Cyan and yellow together. Cyan, magenta, and yellow. Add the black to pull it all together. There we go. All right, so let's see what we can do about sharpening up this image. So if I'm looking at these individual colors, we want to try and pick the one that has the best contrast. So I'm going to do what's called an unsharp mask. And what it's going to do is it's going to give greater edge contrast. So I'm going to go up under Filter, Sharpen, Unsharp Mask. So what I'm looking for is a before and after. So you can see here that we are definitely getting a lot more sharpness. But the question is, do I need that sharpness? I ended up sharpening up the cyan channel a little bit to bring back a little bit of that edge quality and the sharpness to the details of the design. So as we can see, we were not able to reproduce this full RGB color spectrum image. But side by side, we did a pretty good job of taking what we could with the color space that we had to try and reproduce what we were given. Here's the original. And here's what we did to try an improvement. So we took something that ended up being a bit duller and a bit flatter and brought some of the life back to it. So printing films for CMYK is just like printing any other job. In this case, I'll be printing at 60 lines per inch with a single angle of 22.5. I will be taking this file and bringing it into Illustrator to do my film output from there. I'm going to add registration marks, and I will add my information to each color layer as needed. So let's go print some films, and I'll meet you on press. Once you get on press, having your screens level to your platen is very important in order to keep a consistent print. After that, we need our platens to be as smooth and lint-free as possible. Any imperfections will show up in our print. Print order will be yellow, magenta, cyan, and then black. Let's talk garments for a second. Since CMYK inks are translucent, you'll be able to see any rough texture from the shirt through the inks. For that reason, we want to use as smooth a fabric as possible. This will minimize the amount of texture, the ink density, and bumps we'll see through the ink. It is recommended to do as few print strokes as needed in order to recreate your image. It is very easy to oversaturate when printing with CMYK. Since these inks are so translucent, any additional print stroke, a change in your squeegee angle and print speed, or a change in how hard you flood your screen, all of this will change how your design looks. One color can easily dominate your print simply because you are being inconsistent. Since we are printing with water-based inks, all print habits regarding water-based inks are in full force. Keep your inks moist. Keep a spray bottle nearby and spray a little water as necessary to help keep them hydrated and consistent. If your inks start to dry up, your color can very quickly shift. Recognize that we are printing with very small dots. As we know, water-based inks will dry a little in the screen despite our best habits and intentions. This means we will start to lose some of our smaller dots during the print run. If needed, clean your screens to open those areas up and keep on printing. In the beginning of testing, you'll notice that we lose a little bit of color density. Your image is going to look light or unsaturated until you reach an equilibrium point. This is typically 5 or 6 shirts in. If your print looks correct after just a couple shirts, you will end up with an oversaturated print. That is difficult to control during your print run. Since we are on a manual press, it can be difficult to be consistent with your angle and pressure. We recommend you start with a 10 to 15 degree angle and good pressure. If you see the image darker or more saturated compared to your original design, you will want to print with a sharper angle. As for flooding your image, try to be as consistent as you can and only flood your screen once. Do not flood too hard, as you can overfill your stencil with ink. This, when printed, will oversaturate that color. I am going to print with as sharp an angle as I can, but controlling my ink deposit for proper image development. Let's start printing. After we confirmed the proof image on the Pellon, we went right into printing on standard 100% cotton promo weight t-shirts. As you can see, the weave of the fabric, the way it's knitted, is far coarser than a Pellon, meaning there's a lot more open space for the ink to fall into, and it will not create a solid deposit to give us the density in all the areas that we consider to be black. It also does not allow us to resolve as much detail in the areas that we were able to on the Pellon. So when printing on the ring spun garment, which has a much smoother surface, you can see in comparison to the generic cotton t-shirt
that I certainly have better image saturation. I found that during this print run, I was starting to get a little bit more saturation than I wanted, and it's something that I would adjust for within the next couple of shirts. But this is what it looks like as we start to get greater and greater color saturation that we then need to go back and control with our squeegee angle and our squeegee speed. With that said, we can see that we have definitely kept better detail, but the quality of the shirt is not quite enough to keep those super fine details that we could see on our Pellon. And there is a limit to what you can do with CMYK on a t-shirt. If we were to take this design to an automatic press, the consistency of the angle, the consistency of the pressure, and the consistency of the speed of the squeegee would definitely result in a superior product than what I am showing you here today. But sometimes you've got to work with what you have. Printing with CMYK ink doesn't have to be stressful. It all starts in your design phase. As always, practice will make perfect. The more you print this way, the better you'll get. Like and subscribe if this video helped you out, and leave a comment with any questions you have about CMYK printing.